All right, hopefully everyone can see my screen now. So again, this is something that I'm working to improve in terms of the communication from within our staff and out to volunteer interests. I'm trying to do these quarterly meetings. In an ideal world, they wouldn't only be available virtually, but virtual is kind of convenient for a lot of us to be able to hop on and do things without the travel time. So thank you again for making time to be here. For any one of you who is here in Zoom in July, this update is only, a little bit similar, and there's just a lot of new content. So hopefully we can all be in the habit of just getting together on a quarterly basis to see what's going on at the museum. So this part is just where I want to emphasize that the museum's mission is to connect people to our community and inspire curiosity by collecting, preserving, and sharing our region's historical and cultural resources. And we would not come anywhere near being able to meet that mission in such a large area like the Chippewa Valley without really energetic, dedicated volunteers. So volunteers are a huge piece of being able to be a successful and effective nonprofit organization operating to meet this important mission that we have set for ourselves. I've mentioned that we have staff, paid staff at the building. My responsibility is half in volunteer coordination and half in other program, public and private events and elements like that. We have 9 other staff, some of whom are part-time, some of whom are full-time. These blue arrows kind of show you that the feed of volunteers to make that branch of the museum's operations work. And the most pivotal point at which volunteers keep literally the museum's doors open and available for visitors is in the visitor service area. We rely extensively on volunteer support to staff our front desk, answer those phone calls, and connect people who drop in with the various resources the museum has to offer, be it research appointments in the library and archives here on site, or just answering questions about something that they saw on exhibit a long time ago and they're wondering why it's not there anymore. So fielding all those kinds of questions is a huge piece of being a good visitor services volunteer, and knowing which staff people to connect to help get those questions answered. But there are arrows. We require volunteer support across the board. There is that vague piece that overlays all of this in terms of communications. We have a communications specialist, Olaf Lind. He has become vital in terms of keeping the museum's communications running as print media slows down, as we lose the Sunday paper, as Volume 1 changes its format. Olaf has been really instrumental in making sure that the museum is able to stay on top of all the new forms of digital communication and outreach. And volunteer support would be really great to have there. I do know that Claudine, who's with us today, has been amazing preparing small pieces of education content to share through social media. So that's an example of the way that kind of communications feed into those docent service areas and yeah, everywhere. So now, remembering which computer I'm controlling here, I want to just give you like a 2.5-minute overview of the current state of museum operations since we reopened in June. Just review for you the upcoming events and exhibits we have through the end of this calendar year. Right now in October, we're actually at the start of a brand new fiscal year. And so this first quarter in this fiscal year is just how we round out the end of this calendar year. I will mention some of the most available opportunities we have for volunteers at this time, and then point out a few resources that hopefully make it a little bit easier for you to find out more and be a little bit proactive without just having to wait for me to dig through my inbox in my email messages and get back to you. I know that I have not always been able to stay on top of all those emails in a timely fashion. So thank you so much for those of you who are persistent and continue to reach out and connect and ask questions. And then I'll have a couple minutes where we can all have a chance to review what questions we might have in terms of specific volunteer interests at the museum. So I mentioned the museum reopened in June. We had a few modifications early on, but we've actually just been able to keep, for the most part, the modified hours that we set in the beginning. So the museum is currently closed on Sundays and Mondays. We open for Tuesday evenings from 5 to 8 p.m. and that is a free admission period of time. When we open Wednesday through Saturday, noon to 5 p.m., we do charge $7 admission for adults and $4 for children. UW Eau Claire and CVTC students actually do get that $4 student price with their student ID. And museum members are always free admission. So we have annual membership that people can sign up for. And in addition to free research in our library and archives and discounts on museum programs, one of the great perks of museum membership is free admission to our exhibits. So on the right-hand column here, I just outlined how we kind of had a phased reopening when it came to inviting volunteer support back into our building. And so I tried to use this as a moment to shift and revise and rebuild some of the elements of the volunteer program to strengthen it. And that's how these quarterly orientation opportunities came about. So I mentioned in the July orientation, and I just feel it important to continue emphasizing that the museum has held strong standards from the very beginning of reopening when it comes to our hand washing and cleaning practices. We continue as a staff to do predominantly remote work and cycle ourselves into the building just to kind of prevent a lot of mixing and mingling. And so while the building is staffed always, especially during those public open hours, the visitor service team of staff members, I apologize for not muting my phone. The visitor service team is always rotating. So I will not always be the person staffing when a volunteer is handling phone calls at the desk, but it is my responsibility to be sure that those volunteers are trained so that when the staff person responsible for staffing is working with that volunteer, they know that they can count on the volunteer to make sure that phone calls are handled appropriately. I just listed a bunch of other modifications and adaptations we've made, and I included a link here, and I'll make this PowerPoint available on our volunteer site so that you can see and click links and explore for yourselves some of our operational shifts that we've made to accommodate these new public health orders. A brief overview of our upcoming events and exhibits. This week is actually a really exciting week at the museum because tomorrow evening we have our final free public presentation through Zoom connected to our Jacob Reese, How the Other Half Lives exhibit that we're hosting through October 20th. This is a nationally traveling exhibit, and hopefully you will all have a chance to see that before it leaves on October 20th. So there's a free Zoom-based presentation tomorrow evening for that. We also have a kids program that is exploring the way that kids would have played during the time of Jacob Reese. And that is scheduled to happen on Wednesday afternoon, also virtual. And then we have our first big in-person opportunities. I shouldn't say first because we did have a members only opportunity to schedule time slots to see this exhibit when it opened, but our Farm Life Harvest events, the first one is October 9th. And it is available as an in-person option. There is also a virtual option. This is our flagship fundraiser for the museum, but it really deeply connects to the history and heritage of the Chippewa Valley when it comes to farming, and really highlights our flagship, I call it our flagship exhibit. Our farm life exhibit was one of the first actually that the NEH chose to modify to become part of their On the Road program way back in the early 2000s. So I'm very proud of that. Looking ahead, after the Jacob Riis exhibit leaves, we will be hosting a Star Wars nostalgia exhibit, all kinds of collectible toys and action figures related to the Star Wars movies. And that will be a really fun exhibit to have during the holidays. I don't have a picture, but we are hoping to bring back our holiday gingerbread contest and display, and make some virtual adaptations for that. And I put this on here especially because this is the gingerbread contest and display is a volunteer driven opportunity. It's an idea that a really persistent and dedicated person said, I will volunteer to do this. I can do all of the pieces. I will make sure that it happens, and I will work with staff to make it happen. So I've been privileged to only have to coordinate small pieces of this, and our volunteer has executed the communication pieces, the press releases, all the nitty-gritty details up to the interviews with news media. So that has been a delightful way for the museum to bring a different variety of visitors into the museum, and we couldn't have done it without a very dedicated volunteer. So I wanted to put that out there. I didn't mute my background sound, so sorry if you're hearing all these beeps. Our greatest current volunteer need, most immediate, and it does become an ongoing position. The museum needs board members right now. So I'm putting this on here. It's often a forgotten volunteer role at the museum, but they are the volunteers who run that branch of reporting and finance oversight that was on the far right of that chart that I put up at the very beginning. So I have this whole paragraph here, and along with a link that was shared through Facebook a couple weeks ago. I just want to remind you that the museum really does need good, strong board members to help navigate the museum, especially during these more difficult times. Having good, passionate board members is going to be vital for us to be able to continue and to be able to pivot and make all those adjustments that we need to make while remaining financially healthy. So that is a great volunteer commitment. Requires a 3-year, I think it's on here somewhere, 3-year term, and regular attendance at meetings, and hopefully a lot more investment. So if you know someone, if you want to refer someone, please, by all means, if you are that someone, thank you. Thank you for considering that. The next greatest ongoing volunteer need at the museum is in visitor services. I talk about this a lot. It's what I know the most because I am responsible for training the volunteers in the visitor services positions. So that includes front desk operations, as well as our ice cream parlor operations. I included some details here for you to just kind of have an idea of what that looks like now during a pandemic. I continue to be very, very noisy about making sure that things are safe for our volunteers. Before we closed, due to the safer at home order, most of our volunteers were very much in the high risk category were they to contract COVID-19. And I was not willing to look at placing volunteers in visitor services positions until I knew we were doing everything possible to keep our volunteers, staff, and visitors safe. So I'm pretty proud of how well we're doing. We're right now adjusting the ice cream parlor. It's been working as an outdoor walk-up window during the good weather. And now that we're looking toward these colder days, we're adjusting a little bit to allow people to order inside, but still protect our volunteer health and safety there. So I just admitted Patty. Hi, Patty.
Hi, I don't know, but I had all kinds of problems, but I'm here.
Yeah, welcome. I didn't follow through. I had promised Patty that I would resend a link much earlier than I did. So I take responsibility too for, we're just glad you're here, Patty. So other volunteer needs outside of those continuous, big, ongoing kinds of situations, either through visitor service or on the museum boards, other opportunities to volunteer would be more episodic. If you indicated for me that you'd be interested in helping with any or all of these listed here in terms of exhibit installation, mailings and phone calls, event setup and takedown, that's one of the volunteer needs associated with that farm life event that is this coming Friday. So we need a little bit of help setting up tables and then help at the end of the night taking down some tables. They're all 6 feet, they're 6-foot tables. So as long as you're never closer than that whole table length with the volunteer who you're working with to set up, then it's all designed to be a very safe opportunity if you're interested in helping that way. And then potentially research and data entry related to building bibliographies for our new object theater experience, or even just with the volunteer records that I've fallen behind on in terms of entering the data. So I used to rely a lot on volunteer help with that, and it's become very obvious to me now that it's annual report time, how much I miss those the volunteer support I had to get that data entered. So just let me know if you're interested in these episodic opportunities. I had mentioned social media. Claudine has helped a little bit with the museum's educational department content that has been pushed through social media. There's also a few other opportunities that Karen, our educator, shared during her docent in service a couple weeks ago. So if you missed that, but you think that you're potentially interested, I can make sure to share her resources with you. Just please let me know if you have a particular special skill that I haven't even realized exists. If you have a special interest or an idea, kind of like that gingerbread contest and display, just reach out to me. I'm happy to try to get things moving forward. And I just want to remind you not to be too discouraged if there's a long delay. I just want you to keep trying, go at it a different way, and definitely know how much it means to the museum when we do have these volunteers bring things like the gingerbread display or the doing history social media posts. And I can't even, I don't know, the countless things with like the museum store and getting all of our store merchandise online. We've had volunteer support with all of those things. And so we need to continue to say thank you and need to continue to make that ask. It's been easy to try to not ask a lot of people during this pandemic, but we are getting to that point as a museum where we do need to start asking you again for all the little things that we always need help with. So thanks for keeping that in mind. I want to spend about 2 minutes showing you this website. So let's see if I can get I'm gonna pause this and see if I can share the website that popped up. So this is the Google site that I run. It's primarily directed toward visitor services and event volunteers, but I'm working to expand that. So this is just what it kind of looks like, a rundown. It includes the chart right here of the volunteer needs we have for the Farm Life Harvest. You'll see like any events that we need volunteer support, I'll post those here. It says, you know, would you like to lead school tours? Click here to contact Karen. At this time, the museum is not hosting in-person school tours. but Erin definitely does have opportunities to help as part of her docent crew. So then up in the corner here, there's a volunteer news piece where there's an email that I'm sending on a quarterly basis, and that gets reposted here. And then these volunteer resources that I'm going to continue to build out. If you do pursue on-site volunteer support, even if it's for a short event, we do need all of our volunteers who are on site to have a signed agreement form with us related to COVID-19 procedures, and just verifying that you understand what we're expecting of everyone and what we can promise on site in terms of our best possible practices for maintaining public health safety. So that is what I have in terms of my presentation and my screen sharing. And I would like to invite you to spend 5 minutes asking questions.
Sean here.
Hi, Sean.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
What's the current capacity Eau Claire County has set up for large gatherings? What's the number right now?
So at the most recent public health news media conference, they did emphasize 10 people should be like what you gather with. So I think it's not the official order, but that's a recommendation, which is why I'm super proud with this event on October 9th, 16th, and 17th. This would be our biggest annual fundraising event. And Rachel Meyer, our development director, or development manager, I don't know her title actually. She's broken it down into 3 separate nights. And then within each night, it's limited to 45 people. And then that group is split further into four smaller groups. So it's still right around like 12.2 people per group. And we have plenty of exhibit space too. And outside of the food and drink zone in the museum, face coverings are required throughout the building. So that's just an example. And in terms of museum visitors on a daily basis, we have not seen a day where we have more than 20 visitors total. And most visitor groups are staying for about 45 minutes. So it's rare that we have more than 10 people in the building physically at one time. It's been very, very rare from a visitor services perspective during our standard operating hours. So that does mean that those visitor service volunteers are really encouraged to bring like their homework or reading or some other quiet project or task, because yeah, our phones can sometimes get busy, but our doors have been pretty quiet. Yeah. Are there other questions related to volunteer opportunities? I did not succeed in hearing back from every staff person. As I mentioned, Jody, our archivist, and Diana, our curator, are both part-time staff people. I asked them in what they would expect in terms of needing new volunteer support over this coming quarter. And aside from some exhibit moving type things, it seems like curatorial has the number of people that they can deal with right now in a safe way. And then to match the schedule of the staff supervisor, to have that space open for people. She can't be here on a full-time basis. And so we can't really accommodate that many volunteers. So she has all the help she can handle right now. Jody did not get back to me. I don't think that Jody has any volunteers supporting her actually in the archives right now. I think her volunteers are doing kind of remote research support. I could be wrong, but if you're interested in archives opportunities, just make sure I have a copy of your volunteer application and I get that forwarded to her. I usually let you know her name, and if you go to the museum website, which should have been one of those linked resources, you can find every staff person at the museum. You could reach out to Jody directly and say, hey, I did reach out to Angela and send in an application, and I was just wondering about being a volunteer in the archives. And maybe after she hears from me and someone else, then it will be easier. As I mentioned, times are really crazy. It's hard when our communication tools at the museum have exploded, and it's hard to circle back sometimes and even just remember that you need to check your inbox because you're so now used to receiving notices through Teams or through Facebook Messenger, all these other ways that people are getting in touch with us now. So it's an adjustment.
This is Sean here. Are those volunteer forums online?
No. Yes,
No?
in a way. So one of the links I sent on the resources page was actually the teen volunteer application, because that's one I had posted to share easily with younger people through like Facebook Messenger and all of that. So the standard adult volunteer application is still, I haven't uploaded it to Google Docs. I usually email it, and I've actually been working for quite a while on getting the time to update it and transition to a Google form-based volunteer interest thing that could be embedded into the museum's website. And then after we follow up from that, then collect more of like the emergency contact information and everything else. So that's in development. It was supposed to be done by the time I had this meeting this afternoon, but didn't happen yet. So yeah, I know that our development manager is putting together our end of year mailing soon, and that does require a couple volunteers willing to do like paper-based stuff. And it can be a really lonely thing now that we're in a pandemic. We used to kind of have a mailing party with like 3 or 4 of us sitting and chatting and stuffing envelopes, and I don't see that happening anymore. Luckily, we've never licked our envelopes, so we don't have to break that habit, but
So Angela, if I want to sign up for some of the admissions open slots, I just go to the site that you showed us today and you sent out earlier, and I can just click on the whatever it's a blue or whatever color it is in the date and time, and just put my name in.
So the next steps, and I'm glad that you're clarifying this for me, Claudine. So you see all of these open shifts.
So if I click on one of those,
you can copy it to your calendar, but you don't sign up for it. Right up here in this red box, it says click here to email Angela and sign up for a shift.
All right, very good.
And I set it up that way because I did a trial run with a small group of volunteers to see if I could handle them editing and just putting themselves in there. I started to feel concerned about public facing, like who was working when. And I did get someone like editing things in a very strange way, and I had to keep scrambling to delete the weird things that were showing up on my calendar. So
okay, that's fine.
Before signing up, so this is like your official volunteer orientation. Your next steps to become like an on-site volunteer, make sure that you have your volunteer application on file, which I know Claudine does. Every single person here does have an active volunteer application on file. You wouldn't have to redo that. But you would have to identify who your supervisor would be in the area that you would be volunteering. So for visitor services, I would be considered the supervisor. And then you would make sure that your supervisor gets a copy of that signed COVID-19 agreement that's part of that information packet. And then sets up time to do some training, because some of these modified procedures just need to be walked through just a little bit. So someone like Claudine, who has a long history, she knows we haven't changed the way we operate our phones per se, but it's been so long, taking some time to review that procedure and then some of the other cleaning procedures. It's good to set up some training. So I'm going to pick on Patty because she came. So Patty was a Tuesday afternoon help forever and ever and ever, and like the best help we could have. And now the museum isn't open on Tuesday afternoons anymore, but Patty has graciously offered to come back and try to help a couple Thursday afternoons. And so she's scheduled to come in an hour early to get those updated training things taken care of so that she can staff the desk on a Thursday afternoon.
Sounds good.
Angela, is Thursday my little training and am I working? Both?
I have written in my one calendar here that I'm training you at 10 a.m. I don't think that you're helping that Thursday. I think you're
Okay,
helping
that's
the next-
perfect. That's
yeah.
perfect.
Okay.
Okay, I'll see you at 10 then.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. And I gave away how, like, I'm still so paper-based. I gave away that I'm struggling to be so digital and feel digitally scrambled a lot.
So
But
so it might be possible to be trained just ahead of my shift.
yep.
And
So we only have a couple volunteers that have come back since we closed for Safer at Home, and come back in terms of visitor services,
Yeah.
I should emphasize. And they both just scheduled to do an hour of walking through things and then took a break, and then opened the museum and staffed for their shift. And that's how they did that. We were lucky to have all of our curatorial volunteers have returned. So that's lucky for the museum. We're very grateful. It's unlucky for our newer volunteers who would probably be excited to have an opportunity in curatorial because now it's all full. Right. If there are other lingering questions, I am so happy to answer those through email, or we could set up a one-on-one Zoom call. I'm even happy to meet. I sat with Jacinda a couple, I don't know, 10 days ago out on the deck at the museum. We were able to be outside and feel comfortable talking there. So whatever your comfort level is, I'm happy to meet you there. And I just apologize for all those, like Patty, I apologize to you, all those times where I say I'm going to do this email stuff and then I get dragged down by so many email things and then I don't
Don't
send
worry.
my email to Patty.
It's okay.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. You were all here much earlier than 4. So thank you so much for the almost 40 minutes of your time this afternoon to learn a little bit more about how museum volunteering is working and the current opportunities and needs we have. And yeah, share with your people the potential board opportunities and even the 13-year-olds in your life. Let them know that I'll train them to scoop ice cream in the parlor. Those are the biggest needs we have this quarter. So
Okay.
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. Have a good
See you
afternoon.
Thursday.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.